Good evening. You're with the Urban Debate here tonight. I'm Seher Zama. And tonight we're going to be addressing the growing concerns as far as a rare infection, which is now more commonly spoken about as far as COVID recovered patients is concerned. This is the mucormycosis, or largely understood as the black fungus infection. We're going to take into account on why the numbers are rising increasingly, especially amongst COVID recoveries. So far, the confirmed number of cases, this is as far as nationwide, is the final figure here that came in from the central government today of 8,848. If we add up independent data which is available as far as fatalities are concerned, it goes up to around 215 already. Now, there is a surge of this rare infection. As we said, it is already established as uncommon, but it is now being seen amongst those who are recovering from COVID, who have taken in far too strong steroids for treatment, who suffer from diabetes, and who have a compromised immunity post-COVID. Now, there's some information regarding this that has already been put out by the government. Symptoms on how to detect this has already been put out by AIIMS Delhi to help patients also better detect here whether or not or if we are suffering from the black fungal infection. But there's also the other aspect of why this is happening. Now, remember, this is something that is not being seen in other countries. This is something which is India-centric. COVID-19 recovered patients now are struggling and battling the black fungus infection. Also, as far as the drug that is used to fight this infection, so far there's only one drug listed out, which is the amphotericin B. Several states, especially those that are recording high numbers, two of the states that have recorded the highest numbers here, those being both Maharashtra and Gujarat, are also recording shortages. Several other states who have notified this and called this an epidemic are directly writing to the central government to ramp up production of this drug. But the crucial question here on why this is happening and where do we plug the lapses if this is happening because of lapses. This is what we are further going to be discussing with our expert panelists tonight. Let's throw this open to our guests tonight. We have Dr. Anant Bhan, who's the researcher with the Global Health, Biotechs and Health Policy. Dr. Sameer Dalwai, spokesperson of the NCP and developmental pediatrician as well. Also, Dr. Sunila Garg with us, who's the member of the Lancet Commission of the India Task Force and also the national president of IAPSM. Many thanks. Good evening to all of you for being here with us. But first to you, Dr. Bhan, because this is a concern being seen as something which is rare, but is increasingly being seen in COVID-19 patients in India. In your understanding, why is this happening?
Well, thank you for having me. So there are reports now from across the world that fungal infections have been seen to be rising during the COVID-19 pandemic. But as you're right in saying that mucormycosis specifically in India is something which we have not seen elsewhere in the world, at least these quantum of cases. And there's a few things to remember. One, that we have a baseline of high diabetes rates, and often it's undiagnosed. So a lot of people might not know that they have diabetes because they have not yet been tested for it, or they have not reported to a health professional for care. The second thing is a lot of COVID patients are getting steroids, and sometimes this can be usage which is not within the norms of what should be used. It could be excessive usage. Steroids typically will lower your immunity, and they can also cause hyperglycemia, which is an increased glucose level within the body. On top of that, you have to layer on the fact that they are also getting antibiotics sometimes, which can disturb your microbiota. So the microbial structure within your body, which often protects against infections. And then hygiene issues. And when you have all of that combination happening, either during their stay in the hospital, which can be prolonged, or post-discharge, many of them are probably developing mucormycosis, and this is then manifesting with the symptoms. Some of them don't report early enough, and that means complicated disease, which requires a lot of specialists to step in and has a high fatality rate. So as you can see, this whole combination of factors is probably why we are seeing a high number of cases in India.
Right. Yes, and the added fear to that is that several of the COVID-19 recovered patients who've already gone back home, who don't know about this, who don't know how to detect it, are then suffering from, and some fatalities reported after a COVID recovery, which makes it doubly tragic here. Dr. Garg, since the central government has stepped in early on this year, before this explodes and spirals out of control. A list of issues that have been put out by the government. One, that this become a notified disease as an instruction to all state governments. Certain state governments have already declared it as an epidemic. But because this is so closely connected to COVID-19, an increased number of COVID-19 recovered patients showing this infection, is this now technically under the task force, under the national COVID task force and the state COVID task force, to be taking these infections into account as well?
Definitely, whenever there is a pandemic, a holistic view has been taken by the task force. But there are different task forces which are looking after, but particularly the management task force will look into this part. And as already, the government has been advised with regard to declaring it as a notifiable disease, so that, it is notified, no case goes unreported. That is one thing which is important. And so that, every case is managed as per standard management guidelines. And we have got the guidelines already from Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, or also from ICMR and from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, so that every person is managed as per standard management guidelines. And primarily, we have to see that we are much more vulnerable, because as already been pointed out by Dr. Bhan, that India is a diabetic capital of the world. And to further say, Delhi is the diabetic capital of India. So that is the extent of the disease. And now you see, we are seeing the disease in second wave. You saw the disease more in the younger individuals, because we have got now younger comorbids also. So, and diabetes and these, or you say chronic kidney disease, and all these are not controlled many a times, and people are not even taking into that. And particularly, sometimes they come to know only at the facility level that they are suffering from diabetes. So we are a huge population with, and we are a transit population. We have not, got rid of infectious diseases, but on top of it, we have been loaded with the burden of non-communicable diseases. To top of with this is, diabetes, and then leading to the complications like chronic kidney disease and all that. And then along with that, we are a vast country with, lot of providers. We are, providing treatments, and indiscriminate use of steroids is very, very common, particularly when we talk of, standalone providers and all that. So that is where we need to take into consideration all these factors. But then we have to again manage the disease as per standard treatment guidelines, and every person has got to be notified. And already 3 states have made it a notifiable, and gradually more and more states are notifying it. But so that, we take into consideration the supplies as well as, the management issues and all that. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to be coming back to you for more questions on this, but basis what you've said here, Dr. Dalwai, we had COVID-19 cases in the first wave as well. We had diabetic patients getting COVID-19 and recovering. What has been different in the second wave? What's been missing in the system in the second wave that has caused an increase in the number of this fatal infection here?
To all of you and to our viewers, see, it's very important to understand that mucormycosis and COVID-19 are two different diseases altogether. They're different, they're completely caused completely by two different organisms.
Yes.
But what is important to understand, like any other fungal infection, a fungus doesn't really infect a person who's well and whose immunity is good. It affects somebody whose immunity is down. Now, that could be somebody who has a basic genetic immune deficiency, which is very, very rare, or somebody who has a disease which modifies or decreases the immunity, like diabetes, or who is on immunosuppression because of a post-transplant or having a malignancy and is on immunosuppressive medicines. Now, what COVID does, but even then, those were small numbers. Now, what COVID has done has completely increased the usage of steroids as a disease per se. It decreases the immunity. And on top of that, as our colleagues have said, there's a huge role of steroids in this. Now, looking at the mass numbers, though there is a very good guideline as to when to use the steroids in our country, as Dr. Garg said, standalone physicians may have used steroids on their own. There have been instances of self-medication. Now, all this has led to an immunocompromised situation, especially the escalating high sugars and diabetes. And this has led to an opportunistic infection. It's called that, an opportunity for the fungus to catch on to the people who had these issues. And that's why, because we have a huge number of people in the second wave as compared to the first, it may have been possible that a few number of people may have got mucormycosis and may have escaped. I'm not just claiming it, I'm just stating it's a possibility. But with the large number of people now getting infected and much larger numbers, this has come to the fore. And having once recognized a clinical condition, we all know as physicians that we look out more for it. And that's why we are able to identify more and more cases. And that's good, because that's where all, especially at Maharashtra, the
Okay.
task force has already come out with guidelines to physicians. I have that in front of me on my screen here, the guidelines to all. And that's the way to look ahead at it. Because if you are able to better manage the COVID in terms of the appropriate doses of steroids, this will help. But finally, I was listening to Dr. Fauci, and he spoke and said that eventually all of this goes back to vaccinations and vaccinating the population so that they do not fall severely ill with COVID, not needing steroids and not needing intensive care
Okay.
and not having an immunocompromised condition
All right.
is the eventual answer to both.
Right. Dr. Dalwai, please hold that thought here. Coming back to you in just a bit. But Dr. Bhan, to what extent is this a convincing argument here? Is this connected to any other factor? Could this be connected to oxygen mismanagement, because of which industrial oxygen now is being used as well, which is not as clean? Because a lot of the infections are also in the sinus area, the area from which you're wearing the oxygen mask and breathing in.
So, Seher, I think we do need to recognize that last year we did not have the amount of steroid usage as we are seeing now. And there is a reason for that, which is that these were all experimental treatments at that point of time. But over the later part of last year, we got randomized control trials, which clearly showed that steroids actually are very beneficial in the treatment of COVID-19 if used appropriately and at the right time, right? And that is how steroids became one of the mainstays of COVID-19 treatment, especially in medical settings. And so, of course, you know, the answer is not to use, is not that we should not be using steroids to prevent mucormycosis. It is just that we should be using them properly and with the proper regimen that we already talked about in terms of the guidance documents. The second thing, as you're rightly pointing out, is that there is probably a role for the hygiene part of things. Because we had so many cases happening in this wave and there was a high throughput, so a lot of patients coming in, moving out, perhaps not enough time for sanitization, a lot of equipment being brought in from outside the hospital, whether those be medicines, whether that be oxygen cylinders, etc. Right. It is likely that that could have been a factor as well, though it is probably not the only factor. So I guess we'll find out more with proper studies, but certainly hygiene is a factor. And in fact, all of the prevention guidelines also very clearly say that we need to be very careful about hygiene issues. So yes, there are some issues or differences between last year and this year. And if we learn from those, I guess we can try to reduce the case count as well.
Right. Dr. Garg, why are we not looking into this aspect as far as hygiene is concerned, instead of entirely analyzing that this is pertaining to a precondition that a COVID-19 patient comes with, of suffering from diabetes, of suffering from suppressed or compromised immunity post-recovery? There could be other outside factors that we still need to scrutinize, because there are many other doctors who are speaking up. This is with respect to the supply of oxygen, with respect to the equipment of oxygen that is being now used in this rush.
Definitely one of the very, very important questions, but I would like to say that many things are unfolding in this pandemic, and we never expected so many cases of mucormycosis. And you asked last time also, because last time there was indiscriminate use of hydroxychloroquine, because of which, you know, the serum ferritin levels are low, and we couldn't see that many number of cases. Probably that could be one of the reasons. But as far as, you know, we have to, as I've been telling on your different, you know, sessions also, we need to regulate our hospitalization. We need to have the checklist as to every time, you know, we need to change the water, because you see that is where, you know, particularly in larger hospitals like government hospitals and all, we have 2,000 bedded hospitals also with regard to COVID. So you see somewhere the checklist is very, very important, that whether, you know, we have changed the water, preferably to use distilled water, so that, you know, oxygen which is there is cleaner and that can be there. And other part of the hygiene is also very, very important. So, you know, I feel that primarily it has got more to do with the, you know, three things which already Dr. Dalwai and Dr. Bhan have already mentioned, that we have to take care of the, we have to audit the prescription, number one. Taking into consideration the steroid part and all that, we need to also focus upon, the duration of stay, whether it is legitimate or the person is just going on for 10 days, 12 days and all that, so we need to discharge the person as soon as he is fit for discharge. So somewhere audit is also required for that part also. And the third part is that every physician or every healthcare provider, whosoever is involved in COVID care, because now you see we are going to take this, or rather the program has been ruled out to rural areas as well, where we see where
Dr. Garg, sorry for the interruption here, but there's a slight conflict in what you just stated here. Early discharge, not to overstay, discharge as soon as the doctor is convinced that there is a COVID recovery, but these are infections that show up after the patient is sent home, after the COVID recovery. What does one do then?
But you see, the predisposition starts before. That's my question, that if the person is, he's hospitalized for the number of days for which, the oxygen requirement is there. We all have already discussed that primarily. And then we should also see that his sugar is controlled, he's managed well, and that's how. And he has to be told at the time of discharge, if there are any symptoms, he has to report back, because we will definitely make sure that at the time of discharge, he's free from any of these infections and he's cured as far as, both COVID are concerned, and he's not
required. But Dr. Garg, is this part of the discharge protocol? Because right now the discharge protocol has also changed to not having a COVID-19 negative report. It is no longer compulsory to have a COVID-19 negative report for discharge. If the doctor is convinced that you've recovered, you've stayed enough number of days, you get discharged. So should this be added now? This hasn't yet been added to the discharge protocol to check whether or not the patient is showing any symptoms, or whether the body has an infection to this antifungal infection already within, which is not outwardly showing.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I was telling you, that before discharge, everything has to be confirmed. We are not supposed to do the second test again, because you see, we will be looking on the basis of signs and symptoms that the person has been treated as far as the COVID infection is concerned. At the same time, we screen the person for any signs of mucormycosis, and we discharge him with the caution that also, that because as I told you, that there are very, very important factors. If he is a diabetic, and if he's a controlled diabetic, that diabetes also has to be continued to be controlled even in the home settings as well. So these are some of the important things which we need to keep into consideration, and he must come back to the healthcare facility wherever he has been treated, so as to get the appropriate management, not to go again and get steroid treatment and all of these.
Dr. Dalwai, how convinced are you with this process? And I'm also asking you as a spokesperson of the NCP, who's part of the Maharashtra government. Maharashtra is showing the second highest number after Gujarat, the second highest number of black fungus cases, but the maximum number of fatalities. What is available in the system here, and what else should the Maharashtra government expect from the center to bring in more clarity here? For instance, what we just mentioned here, a clearer protocol on discharge here as well. And what I would be asking you later is as far as the availability of drug, but what currently needs to change within the system here?
Well, what currently is exactly what you said, a better awareness and a better focus in public health and public awareness that this could be an issue even after discharge. And I've seen people who just get discharged and they feel that it's the end of, they're never going to have any illness in their life, so to speak. But that's not true. You need to follow this up with your doctor and look at these symptoms. But at the same time, in everybody's defense, let me say this is a new thing. Perhaps 15 days back, we were not even talking about this. And today, this is on prime time. So these are evolving things, as Dr. Bhan said, and we need to keep a lookout for it. And I think it should be compulsorily included, and it is being included in the discharge summaries and the follow-ups. The other thing that you said very importantly is about the availability of medications. So that first starts with protocol and then training of physicians. So that's already happening in Maharashtra, and the task force is already active on that. The other part is now the amphotericin. And this, unfortunately, threatens to look into the same way as the issue with vaccination. That is the allotment of the whole medication. Because again, amphotericin will be, since it has become so important right now, has been regulated by the center. So we have got certain amount of doses in Maharashtra as declared by the Union Minister today. in relation to the number of cases, you are right. Gujarat and then Maharashtra and Hyderabad and Telangana, I believe, have the highest number. So, in that proportion, some of the amphotericin vials have been dispatched, but they are absolutely not enough, and that's very
Okay.
clear there. At the same time, the Maharashtra government has floated a
They're not
global
enough,
tender,
right? Yes, Maharashtra has
but at the
already
same
reported a shortage of the drug here. But Dr. Bhan, talking about amphotericin B, which is so far not certain the only listed drug here, but the most widely expected to be used for the treatment here, the amphotericin B. Certain states already reporting a shortage, even though that there is a government action plan which was announced just yesterday to make sure that more manufacturers are going to be producing this drug. But is this the only available medicine? We don't want to be hitting a scenario which what we've seen in the past, where there has been a shortage of remdesivir, a very chaotic black marketing of remdesivir. We've seen a shortage of oxygen supply. We've seen a blame game between state and central governments here. So right now, keeping in mind mycormycosis scenario, is amphotericin B the only drug to be used for this treatment?
It's certainly the drug of choice, and I think it's based on past experience because with certain fungal infections what works best, and I think amphotericin B does give fairly good results. The problem is that it needs to be given on a daily basis for an extended period of time, and hence we are seeing a shortage. You also have to remember that amphotericin, is one of those drugs which has been used now for many years for one of our neglected tropical diseases, which is Kala Azar. And part of the challenge is that many of these diseases have been always under the radar because they probably afflict poorer sections of our population.
Right.
And hence we don't have the kind of stocks that we should have, reserve stocks. So, it's also a lesson for us to remember that we need to be secure enough with enough supplies for some of these drugs which are useful for patients. And if we had that, perhaps we would have been in a better position. That having been said, as you're saying, there are plans now to produce more of amphotericin B, and that should be useful. And remember, patients will get amphotericin B, but they will get a whole lot of other interventions because whenever they need to be operated per se because of mucormycosis, then obviously you'll need to also have other medications, other kind of care provided. But yes, for the antifungal nature of the intervention, that would be primarily amphotericin B.
Can I just make a point?
Yeah, I can.
Yes, Dr. Dalwai, you wanted to step in at this point very quickly. Please go ahead.
Yes, of course, as Dr. Bhan has rightly said that some diseases, as you use the word, under the radar. So I just like to make a statement in the overall scenario of having seen COVID, and now India is one of the only countries which is having mucormycosis coming up in such a big way. Perhaps it's time for all of us as a country to step back and think, even if we are getting we are able to barely manage handling COVID in the hospitals, but now with an opportunistic infection like this coming in and the issues about hygiene as flagged by you, are we a health conscious nation, or are we enough as a health conscious nation, and not just in terms of the sanitation but also the healthcare? And I think a very serious relook has to be done at the budgetary allocation, because that is eventually
Dr.
going to
Dalwai,
drive
talking about
the public
Maharashtra,
in the longer run.
what are the preparation? Do you have? Is Maharashtra government looking at separate wards now? We've heard something similar to happen in Delhi, but Maharashtra has much higher cases here, 2,000 cases so far. So are you looking at separate wards dedicated to the mycormycosis infection?
Yeah. Just if to clarify, it's not something that spreads by contact as much as maybe the COVID infection, though it's airborne. Because as we mentioned very clearly, it affects only those who have an immunocompromised situation or very high blood sugar. So it's not something that is going to spread from person to person.
But
At
the
the same
numbers
time,
are
your point is
increasing, and we
important.
have to
Yes,
tweak
yes.
the existing health infrastructure and running of hospitals.
Absolutely.
I'm
So
afraid we'll have to leave
that-
it at that. We appreciate all the expert voices here speaking with us here. The big takeaways that we've had from this discussion is to also tweak discharge protocols from hospitals here, because a COVID-19 patient recovered right now doesn't necessarily mean out of danger. The doctors would need to check whether or not there is an antifungal infection brewing in the system, whether that needs to be treated separately or not, because once a patient is sent back home, it's not easy for a layman to be detecting this in his or her own system. So there's a lot more required from the health infrastructure to step in on treating this infection, which has turned fatal as well. I mean, imagine the extent of the tragedy, the irony here that you think that you've recovered from COVID-19 but could be carrying another fatal infection in your system that needs immediate attention, that needs early intervention, and that is required for the doctors to keep an eye for as well. Many thanks for being with us.